Good morning, all of you. And we just have a minute more. There are lots of people I already see who joined in. So welcome to all of you. We will start in a minute. And in the meanwhile, you can all settle yourself. And it's already 11. So let's get started. All right. All right. So welcome to all of you. This is the third webinar in the Recalibrate webinar series, which we've been doing for some time now. And before me and Neeru introduce ourselves, I just want to spend like half a second on some of the logistics and what you all see on the screen. There is a raise hand, which you would see against your name. There is a Q&A, and there are some polls which we'll do in between as well. So when you have questions, you can keep your hand raised. We will either answer it online or we will answer it at the end, depending on what the question is. Feel free to use those options. All right, and let's get started. Yeah? So I would give it to Neeru first to introduce herself, and then I'll go. Go ahead, Neeru.
Thank you, Puja. So hi everyone, I'm Neeru Mehta, leading HR for Global Logic at this point. So I've had varied experience of consulting, HR, leadership development, so on and so forth. And we have a very interesting topic today. The shift that the managers go through as they become leaders, and we'll have some interesting debates. Let's try and make it a very interactive session. We'd like you to definitely participate in our polls and ask questions. So over to you, Puja.
All right, thank you, Neeru. So I'm Puja. I am the co-founder for Recalibrate. We are a coaching and a leadership development and an innovation mentoring consulting firm. Have been in business for almost 2 years now, and been partnering with likes of Global Logic, many other technology companies, Publicis Sapient. And this webinar series we actually started in partnership with our clients, some of our clients who we've been working with for quite some time now. So as Neeru shared, the intent really is to make it as interactive as possible. So we will spend 45 minutes on sharing some concepts which we believe is the shift, as Neeru said, the shift which is required. And then we leave 15 minutes for the Q&A at the end. And what we would do is, when you raise your hand, I would allow you to talk. Yes, the control is in my hand. Which mostly it is actually. Yeah. All right. So, starting with why we really chose this topic, Neeru, what are your views on, why this topic and why not something else?
So, the two perspectives. When you look at it from a macro level, what's happening in the industry, the technology transformation, the VUCA perspectives that we hear about, the ambiguity and uncertainty which is around at a macro level, and coming down to the organizations which we're part of, which a lot of our viewers today are part of. From a micro perspective, there is a change in gears that's needed at a very faster pace.
Can you speak a little louder, Neeru?
Yeah. So
right.
there is a shift that has come that's expected in the pace that leaders need to have.
Yeah.
And that's the shift, which defines who's successful, right? And who can really make the shift emerges as a winner. So yeah. I think that's the perspective, and that's why we chose this topic.
Yeah, and in my introduction, I forgot to share that prior to my avatar as a coach, as an entrepreneur right now, who I am, and I'm a Columbia coach, I was with Sapient for almost 11 years, and I saw all of this, when I was a leader. And now as a coach, there's a very interesting question I ask to my coachees at times, that what's your leadership style? And typically, they'll come back with, oh, I'm goal focused. I am very oriented towards my team, blah, blah, blah. Right. And then I switch the question. I say, all right, let's use your creative side of your brain a little bit. Yeah. And now you tell me, if you have to use a metaphor to describe your current leadership style, what would you be? And I tell you what, they come up with some fascinating answers. And to share some answers are like, you know what? I am a car engine who, continuously keep moving, keep doing what it's supposed to do and keep delivering what it's supposed to do.
Yeah.
Or I've heard things like, I'm a bulldozer as well, right? A bulldozer who is responsible for just bulldozing the way out and really reaching the outcomes. Now, these are some interesting answers. Yeah. But then I asked the question, which is what which is what we intend to do today as well, that if this is your current leadership style, now if I ask you to describe your ideal and an improved leadership style in a metaphor, what would that be? And they come up with answers like, not surprising, in fact, some of them initially say they want to be cooks as well. So the cooks suddenly move towards, oh, I want to be a chef who's got a sous chef. And I'm just delegating things. I have a vision on the future, and I just churn out the best dishes. The bulldozer guy turns to a Tesla. Yeah. So and that's the switch which we are talking about here. The switch about, can you look at the world little differently? Again, there is no right or no wrong, but the intent really is to see, can we see it differently? Yeah. Yeah. If I move on from here, yeah. And before I get started, I'm going to ask a poll from all of you, and you would see it coming in front of your screen in just 1 second. And the question is little not politically correct, but given that I'm out of corporate now, I don't have to be politically correct all the time.
Guys, you can be free.
Yeah, just free. This is, these results are not going anywhere, and they just come up here and then they're gone. So the question is, and you can see the poll right now, are you dissatisfied with your manager, either their behavior, their attitude, or what they bring to the table? I'm sorry, I just saw the question is not complete, but that's the question. And I see responses coming, and as expected, it's going exactly in the direction which we thought it would.
So any guesses?
Yeah, wow. This is going
quite interesting.
Yeah, very interesting. And I'm going to show the answers in a bit, but guys, you do not have to be politically correct. As I said, that these answers are not going anywhere. But yeah, take your time. So we'll give a couple of more seconds. All right. 2 more seconds. I still see a lot of people have not responded.
It's a happy world, Puja.
It is a happy world. And I'm surprised.
Yeah.
Wow. All right. It seems people are still responding, and I'm going to show the answer, though I think people are just...
So Puja, what were you expecting?
I wasn't expecting this for sure. All right. Wow. I'm going to just probably stop it here and show this. Guys, what we can see, you can't see. You're going to see it in a minute.
And I also see many of you haven't polled. So guys, come in and poll.
So it's 36 answers right now, and I see around 60 odd people there. All right, no worries. We are going to end the poll, and I'm going to show the results in a bit, which definitely is a surprising result for me for sure. As you can see, 50% of the world here is extremely happy, which is phenomenal. Not something I expected. Neeru, did you expect that?
Yes and no.
Okay.
So, polls can be surprising. Elections can be even more surprising. Yeah. So, yeah, yes and no.
All right. So I think the question, which definitely, I'm not sure how many of you have asked this question, and I don't know how many of you lead teams here. Quite a few of them, you could be managers, you could be leaders. How many times you've asked yourself a question that why you? Why should people be led by you? Or do we just generally assume? And honestly, in my, previous life as well, we used to hire people based on their past success. But technically, that doesn't give us any right that we are the right people to lead. So, and interestingly, the Gallup survey showed up, which is opposite of what the poll said. And this is as recent as 2017. And this is, again, an old cliche that people leave their managers, not their jobs, right? And even more surprising fact was that this number is increasing, from 50% to 75%.
Yeah.
From 2015 to 2017, 75% of the people believe they're leaving their jobs because of their managers. Now this poll is a little different.
Yeah.
So I'm going to leave that as an anomaly, but that's what even my experience has been. And the question really is that when was the last time you considered that why should anyone be, choosing you as a leader? And because you have a title, just because somebody said so? And that's a question which we don't ask. And this is the intent of the webinar today, is just share some perspectives on who we are right now and who do we want to be. That's only the intent of today's webinar. And yeah, what value you're delivering to your team member as their leader? Have we ever asked this question? So while we give you this perspective between what we call a matter-of-fact leadership and a pioneering leadership, there is no right or wrong. We need the bulldozer as much as we need the Tesla as well. Depends on the need of the hour. Yeah?
Yeah.
Moving on from here. Now, just to share a little bit of a perspective on what's really happening in last 100 years. Things really changed in terms of 90% of the people were in agriculture in 1890s.
Yeah.
Now, manufacturing even less. And as we moved on, in 1920s, people started manufacturing cars, manufacturing came in, management was really turning humans into semi-programmable robots. Now, that's not really a surprise, but what has changed is today. Today's world is even more intense, even more volatile, extremely ambiguous. Bosses change too fast. Acquisition and mergers happen. Or for that matter, people themselves want to shift their environment because they want to have experiences. And I was reading somewhere, Neeru, so, Jaguar Land Rover CIO. And this Jaguar is known as an auto design, really in engineering and a manufacturing company. But right now, if you look at Teslas of the world, everything is a whole data center in itself, right?
Yeah.
And so which means that the CIO has to think about, intelligent steering wheels, there are connected cars. So his vision is not about staying put to what he has to deliver. He's shifting towards what the world wants and where the world is moving towards. And that's really the intent. So Neeru, a question for you really, and you'll have to probably shift a little bit here. How are leaders really responding to such transition, and what challenges the leaders are facing today in making this transition?
So I think very, very relevant, especially when we, look at what's really going on, in the mind of a leader when the environment is so complex. Just taking clue from a conversation I was having very, very recently with a very high-performing leader.
Yeah.
And really a high-performing leader who's not really growing.
Yeah.
Right? Performing very well, meeting the numbers, doing exactly, what he's supposed to do. In your words, keeping the engine running very well, but still not really not moving upwards, moving laterally, staying where he is. So that's the challenge.
Yeah.
I am very good at my work, but am I creating great value? Am I seen as creating the differentiating impact? What is that? What is the secret sauce? How can I be seen providing that value? So that's where, where the challenge or the whole dilemma is lying for the leaders.
Yeah, so value is subjective, but that itself, if you have to shift a little bit.
Yeah.
Sorry. So value is subjective, and that question itself, how many times as leader we are asking ourselves, are we just being what we are calling a matter-of-fact leadership, or rather, and we'll spend only 5 minutes on this and we'll move over to pioneering in a bit, but knowing that this is what we are doing right now is key. So are we as leaders really delivering on results? And under supervision, there is an organization focus, the focus is on results, there is a compliance. So organization has put down a certain rules that, they put them in curves as well. We used to do that, I don't know how many years ago. I don't know if it still happens or not, but it does. It does, right?
It does in varied proportions.
Yeah, so it's still happening. And again, is there anything wrong in that? I don't think so. The intent is that, are we looking at only this, or are we, moving towards a different direction as well? Now, this type of leadership, or as transactional leadership, is conforming to the existing structures. And it values orders.
Yeah.
It values, and it is needed actually, especially when you have to run large organizations. Yeah. So an organization like Hewlett-Packard, right? They need those systems in place in order to run it, which means their managers and their leaders have to follow certain processes. But would Hewlett-Packard be named as the most creative or most innovative organizations in the world? Probably not.
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to say here. So in your experience, Neeru, what all dimensions of transactional leadership or matter of fact leadership you have seen?
I have seen and I continue to see. Of transactional leadership, execution bit,
Yeah.
matter of fact leadership, I think it's part of every role.
Yeah.
And the difference lies in how you do it as you grow. If are you good at providing oversight versus getting into everything?
Yeah.
Are you able to lead a team versus do the job yourself?
Yeah.
Are you comfortable sitting in the back seat providing direction or not?
So I think we'll have to probably just come near the screen. I just got it from the chat. Guys, just give me a second. All right, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, so guys, I'll repeat what I was saying about matter of fact leadership and how it is relevant in so many roles, even at the leadership level. So there is a component of transactional leadership which is essential, and that component is what can give the strategic headway to people. So you have to do some things right to be able to get to the next level of being strategically right. I think that's where I see transactional leadership playing a role always. It's not something we can do away with.
Yeah. So what roles specifically would, people on the floor, managers who are running teams to deliver to a project? If there is, let's say there is a derailed project. I remember, when I was a program manager, I don't know, 10, 12, 13 years ago, I was called in to really get the derailed project on track because it was 130 days behind track. But there's no other way I could have put on track if I wasn't following, let's put down the process. This is the plan. There is a shift between the real time and what's really happening right now. Let's put it back on track. And it's needed there.
It is. I mean, I think it's a necessary thing to do when there is a contingency, where there's an urgency. You cannot be just be at a higher level. You have to get down to the rigor that is needed, the tracking that is needed. It can be called transactional, but it's actually what leads to the strategic bit.
Yes.
So I see this whole piece as a balancing act that leaders need to do.
Yeah.
And how they balance it out for themselves. Do they have teams very good at execution or the transactional bit? Can they provide oversight? Do they know how to do the boundary checks? That's where I think it's the balance, but every job would have it.
Yeah. And just to give a definition to people, it's primarily that there is a reward at the end of this, which is attached to it. We'll say, all right, guys, you're going to get the bonuses.
Yeah.
All right, guys, this is what your performance pay is going to look like. Yeah. And then the management is by exception, which I know a lot of us used to do that when we were starting up as managers, and we were trying to make a switch. Yeah. And I remember using this word switch itself, that guys, leadership is a switch. I used to say that to my teams. And as a coach now also, I see that dimension coming out and playing out in various senses. And I remember, a woman leader, having, coming from an organization which was not that fast, right? And now she has to settle in, set up a team which is not the team of the organization, but a vendor team, right? So even more complications involved. She has to set up relationships with the India leads and the global leads. And she has to make sure that her presence is felt. I know how many of us used to struggle with that when we were actually settling into the new organization. Now that is really the time to really put some basic process in place. You say that this is what the reward is going to be for my team. This is how the checks I'm going to put in place. But yes, we do believe, and this is our definition, guys. If you Google, you'll find a different definition of transactional leadership. Our definition is that even in transactional leadership, having an eye on the future is extremely important. You might or might not execute to that vision, but you need to have that eye. That is transactional leadership for us. And even right now, the mix of the team is changing. Right? There are millennials in the team. There are Gen X and
many generations.
Right now,
we have, I think, 4 generations working together.
So all the more reason that transactional book definition also won't hold true. While you are making the shift, you still have to stay true to a certain type of a style, which is what we're calling even the bulldozer style is this style.
I think it's no longer either or.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't just be a transactional leader, or you cannot only be a transformational leader. It's a world of and.
Yeah.
Inclusivity in your style as well.
That's a fantastic point. And I actually wrote a whole blog on itself. And so many times my coaches struggle with this dimension of or versus and. Guys, what if we embrace and that while I am focusing on making sure that I deliver results, I'm also going to focus on where is the organization really headed? Is the dimension of the direction of the organization really changing? Can I proactively walk up and have conversations with my leaders and see what's the change happening? Do we have that curiosity to really have that? Even then, that's transactional leadership or matter of fact leadership. Yeah. In some examples, Neeru, wherein you felt that came in useful, any from your past life, in various examples of organizations you were part of.
So
your own example.
So I think it's always been, if I speak about we have a very extensive process where we review our managers, right? And the basic component that's seen, for somebody to be even looked at for potential is he performing well? Is he executing well? Is the transactional part in place? If that is what you're asking, is it useful? It's absolutely required.
Yeah.
And then can the person lead the strategy?
Yeah.
Is the person, driving growth? Those are the, that's the eye for the future.
Yeah.
So I think that we see components of that we see in our architects, in our project managers, in our program managers.
Yeah.
The eye on the future or the strategic bit is what makes them grow. But what makes them stay, what keeps them relevant is the real-time focus on all the metrics, all the ground rules. So
yeah, that's fantastic. Now with this basic definition, guys, I'm going to launch another poll. Where do you believe is transactional leadership really working? And I'm going to just launch the poll, and it's a multi-select answer. And now it's there. Select your options basis what you see. Yeah, come in. What do you believe basis what you've heard so far? Where does transactional leadership work? Go ahead, give your answers.
Another interesting one. And we're forcing you to do and.
Yes, you can select multiple. Ajay, I saw that question. Yes, please go ahead. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, so I see a little bit of, so we're going to just spend a couple of seconds more on that. And we're going to just end the poll.
Yeah, I think we got how many responses?
I think we
30.
did. Yeah, where is the mouse? Here.
Hold on. Couple of seconds more. I think
all
people
right.
are responding. Yes.
All right. All right. I'm going to end the poll now and show you that during crisis, definitely, absolutely, that's where it is needed. New product line to be launched, not really, guys, because that's where a new, we'll talk about the other pioneering leadership. That's where there's curiosity needed. There is inventiveness needed. There are certain styles which are needed. It's not really there. Achieving $1, again, probably a mix there, not only transactional. Yes, manufacturing company, absolutely, 50% of the people, and during war, for sure. And that's really what happens. Oh, I didn't share the results, and that's what the results were. We can see it. So essentially, during crisis, manufacturing companies, and during war is when transactional leadership works the most. Now, when a new product line has to be launched, we'll have to shift the gears. We'll have to switch our styles. And we're going to talk just about that in a minute. And you can see there, during crisis, the manufacturing companies, and war is when it really works. Some examples of, guys who've made it in transactional leadership as well. While many of us know Bill Gates as the transformational or a pioneering leader, he was known to be a transactional leader when he started off his career, really. He used to walk up to his teams and really ask questions unless he was convinced. Now, that's a fantastic way for a leader to switch gears, and especially when the organization he wanted to shift.
Yeah.
Vince Lombardi, another guy, some of you, if you follow football, he was the guy who brought in the Green Packers out of in the football league. These guys were nowhere, and just with his pure transactional style of leadership, he pulled them out. He used to make the team repeat their practice so many times that there was no way they would go wrong. So the competitors, their competition, they used to know their moves, but their practice was just so much that they still couldn't defeat them.
Yeah.
Now that again is an example. It tells us that when you want predictability, when you want to ensure there is crisis, you don't want surprises. That's when you do this kind of a leadership.
And that just, before it just brings me to a very interesting thing we're doing here at Global Logic. We say that to our clients, we ensure predictability at scale.
Yeah.
And that means that you have to have that focus on doing things right each time.
Yes.
Another interesting thing, our leader says engineering has to be made boring.
Yeah.
It can't always, you can't have those same repetitive mistakes or surprises.
Yeah, at least make new mistakes.
So I think predictability at scale, to your point, the examples that you quoted, very, very relevant in organizations as well, even today.
Yeah. But there is a downside to it. When I saw your question, we're going to take that at the end. Please keep that and raise that during the Q&A. Now, there are some perils of just continuing to do what you would do. Where would you land up?
Yeah.
Where would you, there are dimensions which I can show here rather than going through one by one, because I do want to switch to pioneering leadership and I'm just looking at time as well.
It is.
So while if we continue to do only this, it will limit the creativity. You will miss the big picture thinking. And again, you are just motivating people at the base level and very short-term goal-oriented. And you actually can become irrelevant. And that is the biggest peril of only doing transactional leadership, right? And I've seen this in many organizations, especially when acquisitions happen, right? And unfortunately, tenure, while it's such a fantastic thing to have in the organization, but tenure can bring in some rigidity, right? So they continue to operate the same way. They'll be redundant, completely redundant. What do you think about this?
I think the missing link, or the gaps that emerge is really, at some point, organization wants you to be able to share a vision. The organization would want you to be able to show the big picture and connect the dots. And if you're not able to do that, and you stay performing really well, but not being able to go beyond your own self, have a larger impact, I think that's the missing bit. That's where, the creativity is limited. You're probably reacting or just solving for the immediate problems, not, looking into the next 15 years or 5 years or 10 years and saying, this is what we need to do today. So I think that is a gap. And, I was just speaking to the leaders that, we're working with, who should be the leaders of tomorrow for us. But when their focus does not shift from self at all, they do see their own success as most important. Right? It's a problem area. It's a limitation of the transactional thinking. It's a derailer. So your transactional focus can become your derailer.
Fantastically.
I think that's where we need to really pause and think, am I being too transactional?
So excess of everything is bad. And just to share an example, to make sure that, all of us understand what we're talking about self here. I was coaching a senior leader in an investment bank, and that person wanted to be seen as an India leader because in an organization which is Europe driven, right? And the person says that I want to really see them as an India leader who can have a strategic view. And he brought up a case, in one of the coaching sessions that, this lady is coming and I really, really want to impress her. I've prepped enough, but still after 15 minutes she walked out and she wasn't. And the question which I asked him, and it took him towards this, that while at times, why was the focus so much on just impressing her, right? Rather focus more on just projecting who you are, which means that you have a view which is curious, you have a view which gives a direction to the organization. Well, we reached here and it was an insight for him that he is actually focusing more outward rather than inward. Now, this is a little different from what you are saying, right, Neeru? But there is a need for us to see inward in order to project who we want to, process outward as well. And that's also a dimension of what we're going to go towards, which is the pioneering leadership. And just some examples of what you see here. No, we don't want you to be Bezos and Musk. We know that. I think you guys probably watch enough TED Talks and enough Musk videos, what he was doing for the Thai cave rescue. So no, we don't want
They're
that.
Heroes in their own space.
But there are dimensions which we can pick from these guys. Now, the question which you as leaders can ask yourself is, what's your playing field? Kodak, and just to quickly talk about Kodak became irrelevant because while they were the first ones to invent the digital camera, but Canon really, put them behind, because Kodak guys thought that they are in the business of selling film, not really storytelling. And that's where they got left behind. Now, that's a whole different dimension. That where are you thinking? What's your playing field? Are you looking at the world around, or are you like an ostrich with your head in the ground and just executing? Now, that's where the shift really happened. The picture which you see here is, and I really did not know that Bezos is actually competing with Musk to put people in space. Now, that's as fuzzy as it can be. The environment right now is, we don't even know that current existence exists, but they're talking about that people will not only be surviving there, they'll be working there.
Yeah.
Now that's a different playing field. And this is the current environment, and you described it earlier as well, that forget the right answers. We don't even know what are the right questions. And I've heard this many times from my coaches, that I don't know what questions to really ask. Now, this is the environment we're in, wherein there is an angst of uncertainty. There is, but we still have to move towards it. Now, imagine the times when we used to have clear vision, clear goals, and people would work towards it. But right now, the times are really changing, which means there is a lot of fuzziness in the environment. So how does a leader really move without a clear goal? Do you really have to wait for the clarity?
So I think, again, this is very interesting. The only thing certain about the environment, and if I have to draw one thing, is the uncertainty.
Yeah,
it's going to stay like this, and if you want to work on something, what you can really work is varied experiences. What I feel as an HR leader, people who've been successful as leaders leading in a volatile environment have been those who've been having varied experiences. Who have learned to deal with uncertainty by failing or succeeding, but going through an experience.
But I'm going to put you on spot here, and you can kill me later for it. That while we say all this, that, and I know that because I was a leader as well, and now as a coach, I see a different dimension. That while one part of, our leadership says that, guys, put yourself out there, go for the unknown. But the organization culture really doesn't support it. It continues to reward the same old people who give the same results, predictable output. So how do if I put myself there, how do I deal with this?
So two thoughts. So I'll first share my first thought, which is not the answer to your question.
Sure.
Later on, share the answer.
So you have to.
So audiences, to Pooja's question, what would have been the course of the history if Mahatma Gandhi thought that culture of India is not conducive?
Now we're talking about Gandhi now.
Big guns out. So that's the first point. The second point is, let me come back to the reality of the organization and people who, not everybody is a Gandhi. Right?
Not everybody is Bezos. Not everybody is Musk.
So what do you do if the culture is not conducive? What do you do? So I think it's and believe me, culture is built by leaders. Is one step at a time process. It's never there. So how do you continue to engage your stakeholders, create smaller wins before you want to jump onto the biggest product you want to create? Get your teams aligned, get your stakeholders aligned, be able, develop the capabilities to work in a global environment where, nobody's going to just create the right culture for you.
Yeah.
So I think that acceptance of some of the things, of the realities, is very important. Let's assume the culture is a little inhibiting.
Yeah.
But should that stop you? Or can you work on it? I think it's a choice. You have to make that choice. Do I want to progress step by step versus it's not working for me?
Yeah.
And both the choices are fine.
Yeah. So I think, I would agree to that. So there is, what we are saying is, and we're going to talk more about it in the following slides, is you are saying that accept and then, galvanize forces around you to keep making progress. You have to come in good here. And galvanize forces, which means that as an HR leader, so what I hear is that if you're able to spot that there are leaders who are making this effort, you'll be happy. And it'll happen. All right, that's a fair enough answer. Again, I think I already spoke about this. No, we are not saying this, but there is a spirit which is needed for a pioneering leader. Now let's talk a little bit about that. Again, guys, if you Google this, you will not find this. This is our view of our combined experience of what we believe a pioneering leadership is. Now that's a model, and you can take a note of this. There is a 5 dimensions of this model. There is a lean, and I'll talk about it. Desire, open, develop, and then the impact really happens. Now the situation really is right now, this is an uncertain world. So what do we do as a leader? The first thing is lean into the challenge, and this is really embracing the challenge. When people say I've accepted, no, that is not enough. What we are saying is embrace it and lean into it, which means that you go looking out for it. What is the current environment? Then the second thing, which is have a desire to really traverse the uncharted territory. Now, many times I have seen leaders who want to play safe. And they still come to this. Again, there is no right or wrong. And now that I'm a coach, there's no judgment even wherever I had. So you can play safe, but then the results also would be what you expected 10 years ago, right? So you have to have a desire. Now, if you look at the Musk example or Bezos example, these guys are talking about, they put the flag post out on the space itself. Now that is a big desire. I'm not saying be that, but at least have some desire. Then just open yourself to the complexity and confusion. Now that's where the reality lies. How many times as managers or leaders we walk up to a senior leadership and said that I need to know the answer, I just don't know how to move now. But that's something which you'll have to deal with. Which means now we will share as to how you can deal with this kind of environment as well. But if you have to be a pioneering leader, first acceptance and embracing that there is going to be complexity. And then the development happens in this journey of exploration and learning. And of course, the impact then happens. There is in fact, when you are dealing with the leadership, if you're only focused on the goals and the wins, there is an operational flaw to it, because we cannot afford to have clarity all the time or just simply wait for it. So you'll have to embrace it. So Neeru, if I ask you a question, what do you believe is the DNA of these type of leaders? And again, is that DNA even supported in the current corporate environment? Because I see a dimension when I see coach people. So what's your view as an HR leader?
I think a one-line answer would be, and this is what I've seen, predominant in some of the leaders I work very, very closely with. It's the values. The values make leaders, and that value, could be whatever, leading from the heart. Could be a value. Being curious could be a value, but it is a value. If you ask Steve Jobs, for example, what made him what he is. He could probably tell you it was hard work, enthusiasm, but really, if I remember one of his speeches, it was absolutely leading from the heart. So I think it is the value bit, which is the DNA, which different leaders exhibit differently. So it is not the same thing. Coming to the second question, what if, how do organizations nurture? Or how do organizations really create leaders.
Or for that matter, how you're bringing panel leadership to your performance appraisal,
Yes,
Neeru? Is
yes,
it part of your competency
yes.
framework?
I think organizations are working across everywhere. There are institutions, around developing leaders.
Yeah.
And I in my consulting days, we used to have this joke, and I was sharing with someone. So there's, when I look at these one-day programs of leadership development, it looks like, it's a chamber you get into. You send somebody who cannot lead, or
start
he's
leading.
probably, and he comes out and he's a leader. I mean, what kind of so that's, I don't think that is what creates leaders. It's really how organizations spot the potential.
Yeah, I agree.
Work on that potential, and as I said earlier, there's no better school than experiences for leadership development.
Yeah.
Right? If you have to develop a global outlook, give 3 global experiences. If you have to develop an architectural mindset, send to 3 advisories. But it is experiences. At the end of the day, experiences. And how do you really start change your lens of how you assess? Right? Assess people today. I think you have to start assessing for value creation.
Yeah. So which means you're saying that organizations are looking at this dimension wherein it is a true, Ajay, I'm looking at your question. Is it a true leadership or a WIP leadership to thought leadership? We're going to just talk about that.
Well, it's a good question. We just park it.
So pioneering leadership primarily is when a leader is leading in a space of uncertainty. There is whole amount of ambiguity and uncertainty in the environment. Who do you have to be if you have to lead in this environment? And we're going to get to what we do as well. Essentially, if I have to use a metaphor, we cannot be driving a car by looking at the rear view mirror. That is the reality right now. Now, how we do it, we're going to just get to that if my screen allows me to move. So, Ajay, I'm going to just answer your question in a couple of slides, so please bear with me. There are 4, what's the focus? The focus still continues to be growth. Focus still continues to be, now there is change which is happening. Now, as a leader, can you guide the change and encourage the disparity in the environment? Now, disparity as a concept, many leaders, and I remember because that was a journey for me as well, that do we embrace disparity, which means disparate ideas on the table in a good way, which means if you want to create something pioneering, which is more inventive, you'll have to encourage multiple ideas in the table. So are you stuck with my way or highway still? Or are you encouraging the constructive feedback in the team? The environment right now is of shared leadership. So multiple ideas can come in from anywhere. So how are you encouraging that behavior of shared leadership? Now, as a coach and as a leader, I remember that, when we were asked to make a charter, as a leader actually, when we were asked to make a charter for the India leadership team, would we make a charter? And I remember having these conversations with my peers that, are you ready to give me your best guy so that I can create a vision which is far more greater than what you can do individually just for your P&L. Now, we all talk about this, right? But if you have to have a pioneering leader, again, there is uncertainty. I don't know what I'm going for. So basis my current knowledge, I pick up what will work best for me, right? So my focus is going to be on guiding change. There's going to be shared leadership and still growth. Somebody is constantly pinging. I'm going to see what there are 2 questions there. We are going to just get to that. Now, this is the switch, Ajay, and you were asking earlier. So what does it really mean? You are basically leading in an uncertain environment, and that leader thrives in that environment. That's what we are talking about. So that switch primarily is for 4 things, which we are talking about. One is you find opportunities and stretch boundaries, right? Which means that you cannot be just happy with what you are in right now. You'll have to go out of your comfort zone. or you have to have a zeal for adventure and risk taking. Now, while this word has been used by many, I'm going to, really ask Neeru again that what are some bold actions you have seen in the corporate world? This is, by the way, Hima Das. She came from the rice fields and she won the recent 100-meter race. Now, that is real adventure for me. But as an entrepreneur, I know I do, things, and I'll share that. Yeah. But according to you, Neeru, where are bold actions really supported in corporate, and what are some bold actions you have seen?
So I think there are bold actions across levels, and we spoke about multiple generations.
Yeah.
So right at the front end staff to the CEO staff, I see bold actions happening.
Yeah.
If I have to really recall one and share with the audience, I remember in one of the organizations I worked for, when this whole global financial crisis is going on, the CEO just took a stand, stood there and said, nobody will be left behind. Nobody will be asked to go. And that was a very strong stand when every other company was letting people go, and, we will focus on sales. We will spend as much as we need to do to get growing. And the whole thing transformed, right? So I think, can you take that stand against your board? That was an example for me of a bold stand.
Okay.
Similar examples you find in leaders. A recent example is somebody who's not growing a business unit.
Yeah.
Right. And really stumbled with this whole thing of being in a maze as far as the whole program was concerned. Now, can a bold stand be taken by the leadership saying, let's get a new person?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Let's make sure that we have a leader who can lead. I've seen a lot of leaders taking that stand where they have to make strong people decisions. That's another place where you have to stand out, be bold, be able to at times not be be differing in your views.
Yeah. So
right, that's a thing I see. It's very difficult with leaders at point. They want to be in the line.
Yeah, and then unfortunately, this is part of a culture as well.
Yeah.
And it's a little subservient, I'm going to say that word, because and we have to be very watchful of that subservient culture which comes in us, right? As an entrepreneur now, I know that we stand in front of the clients and we say, guys, we expect a response from you, right? If we have put in enough hours for you to prepare a proposal, I expect a response. Now I get up and we have walked out of clients who are tentative. We do not want to work with such clients. But as an entrepreneur, it's easier for me. But what I hear from you is that, and I remember doing that similar thing as a leader as well. So the intent really is say it, right? Be bold about it. And then let's see what's out there, because anyway, the environment is fuzzy.
Yeah. And for our audiences, being bold is not just about taking a stand irrespective of whether you're right or wrong. So, it has a responsibility of being right.
Yeah.
Right. So I think everything, what we share there's a balanced perspective to this, being bold, being able to, share your point of view, with a lot of conviction when you write is a capability.
Yeah.
And it comes only when you start practicing it.
Yeah. And the environment is uncertain. So, move away from just telling to asking. And I'm sure a lot of you have gone through, leader as a coach training, coaching style of leadership. Coaching style of leadership comes in extremely handy when you want to be a pioneering leader, which means a leader who is leading in very uncertain times and is very inventive, is curious, is innovative. That's what the organization expects from at least some leaders in the organization. Now, what are you really missing out if you don't make this switch? Now, that's as simple an answer as it can be. If you continue to, not capitalize on anything, but, go to default things that have served well you in past, then you're going to only get very incremental opportunities, right? There will not be any breakthrough opportunities for you. There'll be shunted growth because you are going on a safe path. So you can actually get irrelevant because you're looking for just safe path or just differentiating yourself, right? And I was reading somewhere lately, what some of you might know, that Steve Jobs used to, again, it's not about getting inspiration from it. The point is that the guy was brilliant in terms of bringing curiosity and thinking differently, right? So when he rolled out his Mac, right, he put it in a room, and the media came to see it. And IBM was there as well, rolling out the machines with big manuals. He kept nothing in the room. that was the machine we kept there, because he knew that when people will switch on touch Mac, it'll say hello and it'll create that wow. Now that's the differentiation, right? It was an idiot-proof system. Now that how many times we think about these perspectives to deliver efficiency differently. Now that's what pioneering leader has to have in his.
And I have to just share, when we do our leadership reviews, these are the 4 or 5 areas that come out. It's not that they're not able to focus on their numbers, but it is these areas where we've spoken about providing coaching to people, most of our leaders. So this is the area which you have to very consciously work on. It's a very, at times it's a very conscious effort in these areas.
Yeah, and as it said, ship is safe in the harbor, but that's not where it's meant to be, right? So sail out. Now, some beliefs and values which these leaders have, and this is again based on our experience of what we have seen, right? Again, no right or wrong. You can choose to pick few things from here, but success is not an overnight thing. So Mac failed. Lisa, what it used to be called was Lisa, right? It failed before Mac came out. Or Apple had a run at, their iPad, which was called Newton earlier. So there are many examples of that. And if you've attended various innovation trainings, these examples would have come to you. So it's not an overnight thing, and nothing is really permanent. There is I read a lot about positive psychology, and Martin P. Seligman has a fantastic concept of 3 Ps, which is nothing is permanent. Nothing, it's not always about you, that it's not personal, right? And nothing is as pervasive that it can affect all areas of your life. So having this belief from there that nothing is really permanent, which means things are really changing. Am I ready for it? Am I ready to go out and explore an adventure? Or am I just stuck with that role which is given to me? Right? Or am I ready to switch? And looking for that disparity as we spoke about. Now, these leaders have certain values, as you can see there, but I'm going to just move a little faster because we have 7 minutes and I want to leave some time for questions. There is a fear which people have of taking the plunge. Is this even valued in the organization? Who will help me be this leader? Is there enough coaching available in the system? Would I become redundant if I not, do everything which I was doing earlier? Now that's a secret sauce which we can give you based on our experience. So these fears are natural, accept them. Yeah. Seek your allies, as Neeru was saying earlier. If you have something, a new idea of delivering efficiency, seek your allies. Walk up to your teams, walk up to your family members, because they will help you garner support, give you some courage, and share those ideas, and then collaborate. Now, if you do all this, then you get the resilience, you get the courage to overcome the fears. So fears are there, right? So there is no right or wrong there.
Yeah, and I think fears is a reality. It's not a unique thing, and everybody has some fear. And it's about, like I said, link it to the experience, jump into it, so that the next bit becomes easier. I think that's where I said experience is the school for leaders. And we have to say yes. I see a lot of leaders being very, you spoke about tenured people. Why are they so happy doing one thing all the time? We've seen these as much as I regard institutions. These are some of the very common areas that happen in people in institutions where people have spent 20 years, 25 years. They really cannot deal with an environment which is volatile. So I think that's the secret sauce that probably helped me when I left my first organization.
Yeah, so I'm going to just take a pause here because we have 7 minutes and I have just one more slide and we can come to that a little later because that will just, I am going to open this to questions. I'm going to see the question which I have here. And guys, raise your hands. If you have a question now, we're going to open up for questions. I see a question here and okay, so I am sorry, whoever has asked that question. We are not going to talk about politics here. I see a question which is asked from a political arena. Sorry, not going to discuss politics. So I see Ajay, you have raised hand. Let me just open it up for you and you'll be able to question Ajay. 1 second. Ajay, you can talk now. You can talk.
Or you can write in.
No, he can talk. He can talk. He should be able to. Ajay?
All right. Can you hear me?
Yes. Go ahead.
Right. So thanks, Neeru and Puja. Pretty good session. And I think very key for leaders to make a switch, and the theme and the content was very good. Now, one of the key question I have is, see, leader is a broad term, right? Even a 7-year experience and a senior VP is all are leaders, right? So the key is when is the right time to make a switch. So I mean, at what stage, and at each stage it is important, right? So how do you gradually move from a transactional to a pioneer or a thought leader? I think that is where, so it is not that I make a switch today, it has to be continuous basis, right? So any thoughts around that?
Yeah, so I can share some views, Ajay, from my leadership experience and coaching experience, both, right? From my leadership experience, Ajay, I resonate with what you're saying.
Yeah.
That switch can happen anytime, and it is a gradual switch. But you have to continue to seek those experiences, and that's what I used to talk when I used to talk to my junior teams as well. And you are a leader as well, and I know that you would see that those leadership sparks would come in from anywhere, and those guys would have. And I did a big research on millennials, when I was part of Sapient. Curiosity is part of them, right? So now we're working with that generation which actually has curiosity as their value. So it can start in anywhere. As a coach, and I saw this as well, some of the leaders are still struggling to make that switch, Ajay, because of the environment they're in. And I saw, text somewhere, I think somebody was writing earlier, that because the environment doesn't support them, because the environment, while as a coach, when I'm talking to them, I said that, guys, and they reach a point that I'm going to put myself out there, because he or she creates a new identity. But his immediate or her immediate leader in the organization says, no, you cannot even put yourself out there unless I say so. Right? So
I think it's a lot of reflective thinking when at any point in your career, when you face with a situation where you actually come back to you asking yourself this question: am I doing this right? Why am I not really recognized for something that I've done? What is going on? When you're reflecting on these questions, you will get the answer. This is the shift. Here is where I need to change my orbit, right? And I think while there's a lot of prescriptive things, it can happen at any moment, and it can be planned. And I think you should seek, anybody who's looking to really get to the next gear should seek for such experiences.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thanks, Ajay. Vijay, I'm going to allow you to talk, and I think you should be able to talk now. Vijay, can you talk? No, I think it's not gone. Vijay, can you write? I think you can talk. What's happening?
2 more.
Yeah, so Vijay, if you can type your question. Not able to unmute. Okay, if you can just post the question here. So there are some questions here. I'm going to try and see. So Vinay's question is, often people managers would get what you are doing is so transactional, the objectives are being met, but what's new? It also appears that sometimes board who is asking this is also not knowing what newness they are looking for. So absolutely, and that's fantastic. So then what do you do about it when somebody tells you this, that, if you have, first of all, what you're saying, Vinay, is that when we say that they don't even know, we made a judgment, right? And as a leader, staying away from these judgments, especially as a pioneering leader, staying away from these judgments is the key. And then the second step would be that, what can you do about it? What are the questions you are going to ask to seek that newness?
And Vijay, I get the question. What is new is Vinay, is really, every time I present the same metrics of my project, margin is fine, and I'll relate it. If at all you can relate to the answer, let me know. Everything is fine. My operational metrics look very good. Month on month, I'm showing that. And I'm asked this question: what is new? I think that's where the leaders, are expecting. How are you growing? What are the things that you're adding? What more value you have done month on month, quarter on quarter, year on year? What are the new spaces you can take the organization to? And that can happen at any level. So it's a good thing. It's a very, very welcoming thing if somebody's asking you what's new, because that can propel to you to the next phase of value creation versus doing great work. Yeah. Let me know if I answered your question, but that's how we see it when we ask our, leaders, what is new? Where are you creating or adding value?
Yeah. I see Vijay's question. Thank you, Neeru. Are there any practices on daily basis that you can recommend that will give one a sense of letting go and facing the unknown on a small incremental basis?
I'll let the coach.
Yes, absolutely. So when you get up in the morning, are you going to ask yourself a simple question? Who am I going to show up as today? Right? Ask that question. And then at the end of the day, just reflect back and see where did you land with that question, right? So an example could be that, am I going to show up as extremely curious today? Am I going to look for that that nugget which nobody is looking for? How inventive I'm going to be today? Just asking those simple questions. Letting go, Vijay, is a big thing, right? So while that's a journey, but these small little incremental things about that, who am I today? Who am I going to show up today? Will help you move towards that direction.
The children can be a good inspiration for something like this.
Yeah. Okay. I see a lot of questions that I'll try and answer. Some people want to stay as transactional leaders. Is that fine? What would you advise them, and how can they be true strategic leaders? I think we already answered that question. The choice is yours. If you want to stay, just play safe. Sure, be there. There's no harm in being that leader, because those leaders are also needed in the organization. But if you want to move the trajectory, if you want to switch the orbit, if you want to really create a difference, now that's where you have to be. Right. Any more questions? And I think we are almost on time. I'm just trying to skim through. Mrinal, is shared leadership same as collaboration? More or less. The only thing in shared leadership is that, there is a view which you can seek from anywhere. So I would say yes. The answer is yes.
Arun, to your question, forums that we can be part of to consume leadership knowledge nuggets, we'll send you some of those links.
Sure. I think we are on time. It's already 12:01. I'm going to just close this by, I think we don't have time for this. So I'm going to just leave you with 3 paradox of what we called of pioneering leaders, which is that if you really have to achieve some certainty, you have to look for, seek for, and embrace uncertainty, and embrace the doubt if you're looking to build faith.
Absolutely.
Success for these guys is fleeting, which means that, and many times I've seen leaders saying that I've arrived, I'm there. Now you can say that, but that's not going to get you more. You have to acknowledge that this success is very fleeting for you. There is a last question. We are over time. We're going to spend a minute, actually 2 questions. I'm going to just answer quickly. Kangan is asking how a leader can create value by implementing pioneering leadership in lateral structure. That is where you're not a manager, but you're expected to exhibit leadership.
Kangan, we have, I'll share with you what our leaders believe in, and it's a shared philosophy. It's a very interesting question. Are you a position in the hierarchy, or are you a node in the human network?
Fantastic.
Right? And if you, and it depends where you see yourself from. So no longer, organizations, you should always view yourself as a position. Try and see yourself as somebody who can influence across, who can actually bring value to peers, to lead managers, to teams, and try and be a pioneering leader from that perspective. And you could just be a software engineer still making that impact in your zone.
We're on with time already. Richard, your question about the change mindset, I think we already spoke about that, the beliefs and the values, which one needs to have. And thank you so much, guys. Yes, we will be sending the slides and the webinar recording after the presentation as well. Thank you so much for joining in. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah,
and
so did I.
Yeah, thank you so much, guys, for joining in. Thank you.